everyone, come on in and welcome to this a special video on Ready to Love, because I had to get on here and talk about this new information that is circulating around the YouTube blog world with Jeffri and Simone over on Ages and Stages. Woo, you're talking about a beat down. I tell you, this is why if you guys always listen to my videos, whether you're listening to my Married at First Sight recaps or whether you're looking at Ready to Love, I always tell people there is always an option out here in the world, and that is walk away. You don't have to respond to everything that people say about you, whether it's false, true, hurt your feelings, or whatever. Sometimes the best thing to do is to walk away. And in this case, Jeffri didn't do the right thing. I don't know originally what Symone from Ages and Stages said about Jeffri on their podcast or, their YouTube when they recap the show, because I don't always watch their show. But I do know this, that whatever she said, Jeffri should have walked away. Jeffri should not have dropped down in the comments to confront Simone, especially not publicly, even if she had a problem with Simone, because it sounds like they knew each other because they all are from this Ready to Love family. So even if she was upset, hurt, which she obviously was, she should have confronted Simone privately. She should have called Simone, because they obviously had each other's numbers, emailed Simone, sent her a special message, whatever feelings she had. But instead, Jeffri did what she always does, and she ran to the fight. I've been telling you guys this from day one, that Jeffri is a fighter. She's not meek. She's not mild. She's a fighter. And so when she was upset with whatever Simone said, she ran to the fight. She didn't retreat. She didn't handle it a different way. She likes to publicly try to take down people. We're going to get into this hit list of Jeffri's, because Jeffri has a pattern. And that pattern is when someone does something to her, crosses her, does something that she doesn't like, she tries to cut off their throat and go for the neck. That's what she does. And listen, we've all been attacked by people out here in the world. We've all been done wrong. So I don't want to say that, people shouldn't do Jeffri wrong, and then maybe she wouldn't have to do this. No, she always has a choice. We all have a choice. And the choice people need to start making is sometimes a walk away. Because when you always want to get in a fight, when you always want to confront, when you always think you got to stand up for yourself, you got to be careful. You got to be careful that you're not going to stand up to someone who is bigger and stronger than you and is also willing to fight. And that's what happened with Jeffri, with Simone. She was thinking that she'd be able to drop down in Simone's comments, and Simone would just walk away. Because a lot of people do walk away. That's why I tell you Jeffri's a bully in her own way, because there are a lot of people who walk away. And Jeffri was counting on the fact that she would snap back at Simone, clap back at Simone. Simone would apologize and fold. But she read Simone wrong. Finds out that guess what? Simone got a lot of fight in her too. And her punch was mighty. Now, I'm going to tell you, it was hard for me to watch Simone with the takedown. It was hard. I'm telling y'all, I think I had to pause it a couple of times because I felt like I was watching a beat down on one of these shows my husband likes to watch. Because my husband likes to watch all these shows where people be getting killed, stabbed, necks be getting slit. I mean, tell me, I sit down and watch a movie with him, and in 5 minutes, then I killed 10 people on the screen. I can't watch it, y'all. I can't watch it. And when Simone was going in on Jeffri, y'all, I couldn't watch it. Even though I knew most of the stuff is probably true, even though I had already known who Jeffri was from probably episode 2, it was still hard to watch because I said, Jeffri, Should have never gotten in the ring with Simone. Never should have done it. I'm not going to go over all the information that Simone released in her video because I don't want to take away the shock factor for you all. So you can go on over there to Ages and Stages. You can watch it. She discusses it probably within the first 5 minutes of the show. A shout out to all of my subscribers who came in my comment section and said, hey, you need to go over here and watch this. Thank you, Monique, the first one to tell me I need to get on over there and watch the tape. And I sure did. And at first, I wasn't even going to do this video. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this video because in one way, I do feel a little bit vindicated myself. I mean, I took some beatings out here too. I took some beatings out here when a lot of you accused me of taking up for Blake with Jeffri. A lot of you accused me of not, why would I be taking up for Blake and of how bad a Blake is as a person. So first of all, if you guys watch my channel, I am never a person who thinks everything is black and white. I'm never going to be like one person is all the problem and the other person doesn't have anything that they need to do differently. Now, you may watch a particular video and in that video, I'm harping on maybe one person. But if you watch my videos each week, you see I dish it out equally. So we're going to go through this hit list of Jeffri, and I'm going to start with the first people that were on Jeffri's hit list were these baby daddies. Number one and number two, a baby daddy. We find out that there are definitely two of them. Like I said, if you want more details about how the years don't add up with Jeffri, how she may and may not have been married, even though she says she's been married for 12 years. Supposedly there's some discussion about an annulment. I don't know. There's some discussion about whether or not the second baby daddy contested the paternity of the second baby. We know all these things happen out here in the world regularly. We do know that. But reason why I'm going to say that these men were the first people on Jeffri's hit list is because when Jeffri showed up on this show, one of the things she started crafting right away was that she was 100% mommy. She's the best mommy in the world. And these are all the things dedicated to being a mother, which I'm not going to dispute any of those things. Or maybe she is. I'm not going to say anything. But I recognize that there was a very concerted effort for Jeffri to spin a story about herself that everyone ate up and believed. And remember, in the beginning, we didn't hear a lot of bad stories about the fathers of the kids. We just heard that she was a single mother trying to raise 3 kids out here. And of course, as a female, a lot of people would empathize with that story. But there was always things I didn't believe about Jeffri. And my first red flag was that nasally voice. And I said to myself, why would a woman who's 32 years old walk around with a childlike voice? Why does she want me to view her as a child? Why is she trying to make me view her as a small, innocent, fragile child when she's 32 years old? And I immediately then knew that there was a cover up, because what you're trying to do is almost like a wolf in sheep's clothing. You're trying to make me focus on one thing, which means that you don't want me to see something else. It is a diversion. That's what it's called. It's look over here or don't look over here. Okay? That is the first sign. That's why I always tell people in my videos, listen with your eyes. Watch. Don't just listen with your ears. And what Jeffri was trying to get everyone to do, including these men, is to listen to my nasally voice. Listen to the words that come out my mouth, but don't watch me. Because the minute you start actually watching her, you start to realize that what comes out of her mouth doesn't match what she's doing. And there is your first conflict. But after the baby daddies, the second victim of her hit list became Blake. Now, let me clear this up. I absolutely believe that when everyone first came on this show, Blake was attracted to Jeffri. I believe it 100% because I think Jeffri has the look that Blake likes. I think Jeffri had the demeanor of being meek, mild, soft, feminine. I think Blake was attracted to all that. I don't think Blake wanted any more children, or we know he didn't want any more children. So we knew that Jeffri already had children, so he wouldn't have to worry about that. And as she had mentioned, she's 100% mom. So of all the women on the show, I can actually see why Blake's one of his top person he would actually probably try to pursue or talk to would be Jeffri. But as we got to know Blake, we also learned that Blake is a corporate security officer. He's direct. He's to the point. He's an investigator. He's an interrogator. He likes to ask questions. He doesn't believe easily. He needs a lot of facts about you. He likes to dig in, almost do background checks on you by asking you a bunch of questions. He loves to ask questions more than he likes to answer questions. We saw this on all his dates. All his dates, it looked like he would interrogate the women, ask them questions. And then what he would do is he would come to quick judgments. He could easily point out in women the things that weren't so attractive to him. He was quick to criticize, but not quick to uplift. That became my issue with Blake. It had nothing to do with Blake was a liar. It had to do with the fact that Blake was quick to criticize, but not quick to uplift and give compliments. All these women here are beautiful women, nice things about them, but Blake oftentimes concentrated on the parts of the women that were maybe their less attractive parts. So I already figured out what happened between Blake and Jeffri. Once Blake started to pursue Jeffri, he went in like he normally does, asking questions, interrogating her. And let me tell you, when a person is living a lie and acting a lie on television, the last thing you want to be happen to you is to be interrogated and asked a bunch of questions. And that right there caused a problem for Jeffri. Because what Jeffri said about Blake was he was rude, borderline abusive. He was possessive, always asked me what you doing, where you going, this and that. He was interrogating her because the more he got to know her, the more questions he started asking. He realized this woman's story, it doesn't add up. He said, this woman's story doesn't add up. He went in there, asked questions, realized, okay, you got a 13-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old by two different baby daddies. Okay. And maybe he found out at that time that she hadn't even spoken to these baby daddies for over 6 years, 3 or 4 and 6 years. Blake probably had more information about Jeffri earlier than we did because we didn't hear about this, that the man been missing for 6 years until it became a Meet the Exes episode. But Blake knew about it much earlier. And when he learned about it, I guarantee you he was turned all the way off. And I guarantee you, he didn't just walk away from Jeffri. He left Jeffri with some parting words because that's what Blake does. Blake doesn't just come to a judgment about you and then say, but I'm going to keep my mouth to myself. I'm not going to say anything and I'm going to just walk away. No, that's not what Blake does. He comes to an assessment about you and then he lets you know what he thinks about you. That in there is part of the problem with Blake. It's not that he isn't right on maybe some of his judgments. The problem with Blake is he lets you know what the judgments are, even when the judgments are mean and nasty. So I guarantee you that once he came to a judgment about Jeffri, he told her. And once Jeffri knew that Blake was no longer in her corner, no longer gonna believe the stories she was telling, Jeffri immediately put him at the top of her hit list. So before Blake could even come back and spill the beans on her and tell the group everything he had discovered about Jeffri, how she probably had multiple baby daddies, how she probably hadn't seen the fathers for over 6 years, that they didn't want to have nothing to do with them, what she decided was she was going to off Blake at the first opportunity. And she came in guns blazing in that deliberation room and told all those ladies and spoiled all their minds about, let me tell you who Blake is. Let me take some of the truth embellish the story, add some hot sauce to it, so everyone thinks that he is a horrible, horrible person, more so than what he really is. And that's what she decided to do. And her game plan was to get him off the show. The problem that Jeffri ran into was Advocate Sue. The problem Jeffri ran into with her whole scheme was Advocate Sue. Advocate Sue had started to get to know Blake as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Blake shared information that he had found out and discovered about Jeffri with Advocate Sue. I wouldn't be surprised if Advocate Sue, the reason why she took up so strongly and so fiercely for Blake was because she had information on both people, both of them. And what she discovered was Jeffri's story was way worse than Blake's offense or Blake's story. And so what Jeffri miscalculated was that she was going to have a staunch attorney such as Advocate Sue taking up for Blake, and that Blake and Symoneon would form an alliance that would prove to be too tough for Jeffri to take down. And so what Jeffri said was, well, now I'm going to have to add Advocate Sue to my hit list, because I have to not only take down Blake, I have to take down Advocate Sue. And that's how the term Advocate Sue came about. But here's where I tell you Jeffri isn't as a fierce and intelligent fighter as she thinks she is, because here's the problem. Advocate Sue really wasn't a put down. She thought that she was putting down Symoneon by calling her Advocate Sue, but really what she was doing was she was actually correctly describing the skill set of Symoneon. She is an advocate. She's very, very good at it. And as a result, the double teaming of Advocate Sue and Blake, along with the fact that the producers liked the storyline of Blake, became too much of a formidable opponent for Jeffri. Even when Jeffri was trying to get rid of Blake and she couldn't do it, she brought in the chief executor, Morgan, where she has a long history of getting rid of people, and even Morgan couldn't get the job done. Remember the whole you're not just a benign cancer, you're malignant? That was when Jeffri was bringing in the top gun, top executor, and even the top executor couldn't get the job done. Jeffri was desperate to get rid of Blake. Once again, Jeffri would have been better off walking away. When Blake decided to walk away from Jeffri, instead of attacking Blake, Jeffri should have just let Blake walk away. I don't even think Blake was going to spill her secrets. I don't even think Symoneon would have spilled her secrets. But it isn't because Jeffri ran to the fight. She didn't run away from the fight. She should have left Blake alone, went along, and concentrated on her other connections. But instead, what she likes to do is she doesn't walk away. She doesn't like to walk away. She likes to dress up in her ninja outfit and come in the middle of the night and try to kill you while you're in your sleep. That's her operation program. That's what she likes to do. So we have victims number one, the two baby daddies, the stories she tells about them. Now we have a victim number 3 was Blake. A victim number 4 was Symoneon. Now we're on to victim number 5, and that victim number 5 is going to be Demario. Demario was also one of the people that fell under the spell of Jeffri, because what Demario was attracted to with Jeffri was what he always said in the beginning of this whole season. Demario said he was an alpha male. Can't stand the term. I can't stand it, but we're going to go with it because that's what he wants to describe himself. And every alpha male, self-described alpha male, the Blakes of the world, the Demarios of the world, they don't want a fighter woman. They don't want another alpha female woman, as they say. They want a woman who is demure, who is meek, who is mild. And so he became, interested in Jeffri. But Demario got in there and he started to realize some things about Jeffri as well. And guess what? He also realized her stories are not adding up. They're not adding up. So if you remember the big blow up with Demario and Jeffri, it came with the kiss of Mark Anthony. Well, the truth of it, if you went back and you watched the interview with Demario that he did, his exit interview, you can look at my video. I did the video with the exit interview he did with Crystal XO, and he also did one with other people. If you look at that video, you'll realize that Demario actually had become uninterested in Jeffri prior to the kiss with Mark Anthony. And one of the reasons why Jeffri kissed Mark Anthony is because she was aware already of Demario's disinterest in her. Because what Jeffri says is, why are you so mad, Demario, that I kissed Mark Anthony when you weren't even talking to me anymore? You were ignoring me. You weren't calling me. You weren't checking on me. You weren't texting me. And even on this boat, you didn't talk to me. Demario had already lost interest in Jeffri. He had already figured her out. So once he figured her out, Jeffri decided Demario is the next person on my hit list, and I'm going to take him out because I don't want him going around and spreading things about me and poisoning the well about me. So I need to get ahead of this. And if you remember, on that kiss, on that boat, after she kissed Mark Anthony, she put Demario on the bottom. She put Demario on the bottom and put him up for elimination. Now, a lot of you say, what's wrong with that? Well, here, let me tell you why that's strange. Because there are a lot of men on the show in which you never had a connection with. So if you're going to put someone on the bottom, more than likely you would put someone on the bottom that you never had a connection with. You wouldn't necessarily put someone on the bottom, whereas even though you had a connection, you realized you weren't the right for each other, so you're going to move on. There's no hard feelings with that. But Jeffri knew that Demario wasn't going to be able to remain on this show because Demario would start poisoning the well of other people. So she had to off him. She had to get rid of him. And so she put him on the bottom. And what enraged Demario the most, if you watch his exit interview, you have to read between the lines. What enraged Demario the most was that now he was a man up a creek with no paddle. Because Demario only had two connections, and that was Jeffri and Corvaya. And since Corvaya had gone home, the only person he had left was Jeffri. Jeffri would have been the only person who could have saved him and kept him on the show. And what happened to Demario was that although he hadn't been talking to her, even though he had put all his eggs in the basket of trying to save Corvaya, he didn't expect Jeffri to turn on him so fast, so soon, because remember, he underestimated who Jeffri was. And the minute he was without the cover of Corvaya, Jeffri went in the cover of the night with her ninja outfit on, snuck in the window, and offed him. He had no opportunity to fight back. He was out. Another one on the hit list going down. So you say, okay, Deborah, well, who was on the next list? I don't understand. How could you say that even Blue was on the hit list of Jeffri? Well, a good question. If you remember the Blue connection with Jeffri, another person, Blue didn't have a lot of connections with a lot of different people. You know, Jonique had gone home. He didn't have a lot of connections. So when they had the Meet the Exes and they were sitting at that table with Mark Anthony, Jeffri, and Blue, and Jeffri was telling her stories about how she hasn't seen these baby daddies for 6 years, how she doesn't have any ex out here who can give her a referral. We're not talking about you had to bring your ex-baby daddies. We're talking about you are 32 years old and you have no man that who can stand here in front of us and say, I can vouch for this woman? No one. So she sat on there, told bad stories about these baby daddies, and Blue didn't buy it. Blue wasn't buying it. If you look at his demeanor, if you look at his body language, he wasn't buying Jeffri's story one bit. In fact, there's several times during the story that Jeffri's telling, he looks over at Blue Anthony and basically says, are you believing this shit? And guess what? Mark Anthony was believing it all. You know what saved Mark Anthony from Jeffri's execution was because Jeffri is out here, because Mark Anthony is out here gullible enough to believe Jeffri's stories. I can't remember my commenter's name, but they probably said the one thing that resonated me the most about this thing with Mark Anthony. Mark Anthony, I believe, has never had experience with a woman like Jeffri. I know Jeffri tries to say she's 32, close to the same age as Mark Anthony. I don't believe it. And I don't believe Mark Anthony has ever had to deal with a woman who is as ruthless and conniving as Jeffri. So he couldn't even fathom that this little thing that Jeffri is doing is all a charade and an act. And he eats up her story. So he's always going to be safe in Jeffri's eyes, because Jeffri can still use him, because we all know she ain't going to choose Mark Anthony. She's going to choose Andre, because Andre has a Forbes money, as she believes right now. I don't believe that either, but hey, we're going to roll with it. But anyway, at that table, Blue didn't believe anything that Jeffri was saying. And it wasn't until the very end when I knew that Blue was about to get off by Jeffri. Because what Jeffri did at that table, after she did her song and dance and told her story, she looked over at Mark Anthony and Blue and said, do you understand my story? I think she said in her little nasally voice, I hope you understand. I hope, it was something like, are you believing everything I'm saying? I can't remember the exact words. And Blue, if you remember the thing about Blue, he's also a straight shooter. Blue walks around saying, I'm not going to tell you something that's not true. I'm not going to lie to you. And when Jeffri was looking for comforting words from Blue that he was believing her story, Blue looked at her and said, I can't promise that. Blue looked at her and said, I'm sorry, I can't promise that. And Jeffri looked at him, and I'm telling you, the smile on her face disappeared. She looked at him, and I said, in that moment, he's about to get slaughtered. And sure enough, in that deliberation room that same day, guess who Jeffri put up for elimination? Blue. Once again, she put someone up for elimination who she had just had a connection with the day before. But the reason why she had to off Blue is because now Blue might possibly expose her as well. Blue might come back and tell the ladies and the men this story about how Jeffri has no referrals. She has no recommendations. The fathers of her children don't even want to deal with her for 6 years. Her last father is contesting the paternity of the baby. This is a mess. Jeffri did not want to give Blue a chance to tell that story. And guess what happened? He got offed. He got a silence like the ninja in the cover of the night. She snuck in the house, basically slit his neck. And now we have the last victim, the latest victim of Simone. And when Simone, whatever she said on her YouTube channel, it put her up for the next person on the hit list, and Jeffri came for her. But the problem is that Simone has a wide audience. She got a lot of subscribers on her YouTube channel. She has a lot of people that listen to her. And let me tell you, Jeffri once again should have just walked away, but she didn't. But I want to go a little bit further in this discussion, and I want to say, how did Jeffri even get here? How did Jeffri come up with this plan of coming on Ready to Love? Because I'm telling you, this is a plan. Just like Mark Anthony said, Jeffri is an overthinker. In the last dates that Jeffri had with Mark Anthony's friend said, what are some of your red flags or whatever things you need to work on? And Jeffri said, I'm an overthinker. And what I told you guys in my videos, that overthinking is I'm a plotter, I'm a conniver, I'm a manipulator. And I think things way deep because I'm plotting. Okay. And Jeffri is a plotter. So I guarantee you that Jeffri didn't come into Ready Love without a plan. She didn't come in Ready Love without a plan. And you want to know how Jeffri came up with this plan? Right here. This is who inspired her plan. This man right here, Kevin Samuels, is the one that inspired Jeffri's plan. Let me tell you, I used to listen to Kevin Samuels. I enjoyed some of his content. Did I think he was harsh sometimes on women? I did. But I also enjoyed the perspective he brought from other people. And the one thing that Jeffri has proven in this whole Ready to Love, she's actually proven that part of what Kevin Samuels was saying on his station, on his YouTube channel was true. What Jeffri has proven is that one of the things that Kevin Samuels used to say, if any of you watched him, it was really focused on women who wanted high value men. And Jeffri absolutely wants a high value man. Let me tell you, Jeffri's tired. One is she's suffering from a chronic disease, which makes her tired. That's a burden all by itself. She's has 3 children, one that is a toddler, 2 years old, another one that's 5 years old. Come on, people. That's not even up in middle school. That's still primary school. And she's got a teenager that's 13, 14, 15 years old. She's got a lot on her plate. And she's an executive assistant, which they make good livings, but they're not making $250,000 a year in order to care for 3 children. I don't know if these are baby daddies that she can't seem to talk to for 6 years are paying child support. She might have been able to track them down. But according to Simone, they may not be paying much because it sounds as if they had a lot of financial troubles, which means Jeffri is probably financially responsible for these kids by a great deal. So Jeffri needs a high value man. And this is right up the alley of what Kevin Samuels used to say. One of the things Kevin Samuels used to say was, if you want a high value man, you need to be 3 things: fit, feminine, and cooperative. Think of Jeffri. Fit. Even Mark Anthony said one of the things that he was attracted to Jeffri was the fact that even though she had 3 kids, she was fit and she has held herself well. Jeffri wears yoga pants every episode to make sure we know how fit she is. She's fit. Jeffri is attractive. You cannot take that away from her. At her age, whether she's early 30s or late 30s, she's attractive. She was probably even more attractive when she was in her 20s. She is fit. Feminine is what all these men were drawn to from Jeffri. Her femininity, her softness, her meekness, her mildness. Inspirational. That was the other thing that Kevin Samuels talked about. Jeffri talking to Andre, let's toast to the most wonderful man. Look at all of Jeffri's dates with all these men. She inspired them. She pumped them up. She fed them a bunch of information and pumped up their egos, made them feel like they were the kings of the world. Inspirational. Where did she get all this playbook from? Kevin Samuels. Because what Kevin Samuels said, she is in the danger zone. By Kevin Samuels' standards, Jeffri would be in the danger zone at her age with 3 kids, 2 baby daddies. So what Jeffri knew she had to do was she needed to perfect to the nth degree this fit, feminine, and inspirational game plan so that men will be drawn onto her. And you know what, people? It actually happened. Look at all the men that were lining up for Jeffri. Even when Jeffri was raging on Simone in her clap back to Simone, one of the things Jeffri said was, if I'm not the real deal, why do all these men look at me as the wife? What she's saying is, my plan is working. My plan worked. Because as much as you guys want to talk about me and my baggage and my 3 baby daddies and all of this, my plan is working because all of these men are chasing me. Look at all these men who see me as the wife. The problem with Jeffri's plan, though, It's just what Kevin Samuels said, is that you're not a wife if they haven't married you. Men are still going to vet you. And the problem with Jeffri is, although she has perfected the fit, feminine, and inspirational, once they get close, once they realize that it's a fake Louis and not a real Louis, they scatter and they run. So Jeffri thinks her plan is working, but it's not actually working. Because yes, does it draw them unto her? Yes. Does it make them come close? Yes. But no man is trying to close the deal with Jeffri. Now you might say, well, Andre ain't gonna close no deal with Jeffri. I guarantee you, because to be honest with you, Jeffri might run away from Andre, because I'm not quite sure Andre really does have Forbes money. Jeffri's looking for a high value man. And she is going to vet Andre too. And if Andre's salary and income do not measure up to what Jeffri needs, Jeffri will not be being no inspirational person for Andre anymore. So I do not believe that's going to work either. I don't believe it one bit. But through all this whole season, I've told women, you can learn something from Jeffri if you're the real deal. You can learn something from Jeffri if you're a real deal, because Jeffri's bait, fit, feminine, inspirational, it did work, people. The problem was that once you start to dig deeper, it won't hold up. So a lot of women, they are the real deal. They really do have all the things that would make them a great wife. But one of the things that Jeffri is out here also showing is that if all these women who were the real deal, when men did come up close to you and they really did look at you, you would actually get the job. Jeffri is telling you that all you have to add to your repertoire is being a fit, a feminine, and inspirational. And guess what? You would have all these men surrounding you too. Now, does it mean that you would want the Demarios of the world, that you would want the Blakes of the world, that you would want the Mark Anthony's of the world? I don't know. You may not even want any of these men that so-called were chasing after Jeffri, but at least you would have the option. At least you would have the option of saying no. A lot of women don't even have the options. So if I could say there's one thing about the fake Louis, which is Jeffri, I would say this. Don't fight. Learn to walk away. Jeffri needs to learn to walk away, because I'm quite sure that this fighting, argumentativeness, run into a fight existed in her marriages with her husbands. Because if Jeffri had been a fit, feminine, and inspirational in her marriage, there might be a good case to say, well, then maybe her marriage would have worked. Because I don't believe Jeffri is meek and mild. Jeffri is a confrontational. Jeffri likes to fight. I could tell, because she's too skilled at it. People who don't like to fight don't have fighting skills because they don't practice enough. It's only people who like to fight and who have to fight a lot that makes them so good at it. And I don't want to hear that she had to learn how to fight because her exes were so horrible. I don't know. But one thing I know about Jeffri is Jeffri likes to spin a story. So I'm not going to throw all these baby daddies under the bus, because I haven't met them. I haven't seen them, but I've seen a lot of tape and footage on Jeffri. And I know enough about Jeffri to know that she likes to fight and she likes to spin a story. So, you know what? People said this season was boring on Ready to Love. I don't think so. I think it as juicy as a lot of other seasons, and even better. Sure, we may not get no love connections this season. We may not get no love connections this season. But I'm going to tell you this. I have been thoroughly entertained. But anyway, that's it, y'all. Please sure to check out my other Ready to Love video when it comes out next Friday, Saturday, whatever this can be. And you can definitely check out my videos from this last episode. I've uploaded the videos, and here are the links above my head, and you can watch it. That's it, y'all. Tell me what you think. Drop down in my comments. I love to hear what y'all got to say. Okay, bye.